Hi guys, I'm Liana here from Her Random Outburst. I'll make it short and sweet. For a long time I've been going back and forth whether or not to start document my upcycling, just to kind of share a story of what a garment kind of undergoes and what the personality has before and after. And so what essentially upcycling is recycling and turning something old into new, to keep it short and simple. With today's video, it's going to be a silver dress which I've been wanting to upcycle for a really long time. Essentially, this silver dress, I've had it for a really long time. It's actually my mum's dress. It's slightly out fashion, slightly got a bit of Great Gatsby kind of theme to it, if you'd like to say. So it's kind of got this shimmery, glittery, textured kind of feel to the fabric. What I love about the dress is that it's got this fringing detail at the bottom here. What I think I'd love to do is completely transform this maxi dress into something which is sexy, slick, modern. I want it to have cutouts, and I definitely want to do something with the fringing detail, whether it's probably used for front design feature running vertically instead of horizontally on the hem. If not, then I think using it as back detailing, kind of showing a bit of the back. We'll see. I kind of like to experiment as I go. So what I'll do is that you can see behind the scenes and you'll see the magic happen. I'd be interested to hear feedback from you all, what you think, what you like, what you don't like, which do you prefer, whether it's before or after transformation. Really appreciate any type of feedback. This is the back and then this is the front. So right now I'm just gonna play around with kind of experimenting with the different types of potential which could happen. So I'm just gonna play around, cut around and see what I can do. So right now I'm just cutting off the binding so that the lining and the outer shell can essentially be separate. Once they're separate, then I can manipulate the layers a bit more easier. So now that the lining and the outer shell are separate, let's just take the two apart. It's like shimmery almost. Essentially what I want to do is put the fringing like this, and then I want an underneath boob tube layered directly under, and then there will possibly be a cutout here. But what I want to do now, find a line in which I can cut and put the fringing in. So we're going to go right ahead and cut a fine line down here and a fine line down here, marking in the halfway point from another half and then another half here. Let's go ahead and cut as far down as possible up until past the bust point, and the same on the other side. That we've got that, and so that's where we've cut. If we were to kind of pop it back up here to see what it looks like, what I'm going to do now is cut at the tassels at the bottom, cut around the fringing here. So I think what's best is to kind of keep it consistent and maybe cut right above each curve point there. Alright, so now that we've got the trim that we want, completely separate to the dress. So now that we've got the trim, place it on top of where we just cut out. And even if we kind of use this trim as a back detailing to show off the back side, I think that would also be quite nice. Even something like that. And then the back looks like this. That's half the side done. Cut down a bit further. So starting a bit higher. Pleat number 1 done. Let's see what pleat number 2 looks like. So bringing this across again. That's what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is cut this. Go ahead and cut this back portion off because we won't need it. So let's just do it at the side. Okay, so now that we've cut this side seam, let's do it onto the other side where it's matching. So again, right on the side seam. I like using the contrast between the back and the front, because if you compare the dark the back side is clearly a lot darker. So I want to use it to my advantage. And right now, I just want to focus on doing this boob tube layer. Cut across here for now. We don't technically need this part here, seeing as that's where the cutout is going to be. It's kind of following what's already given to me on the fabric, whether it's the lines, following those as guidelines. Just going to cut across. Now that that's done, I'm trying to make it symmetrical to the other side. Trying not to waste this piece, thinking I might just leave it as it is. Grabbing the side panels, which we got originally from here, let's bring it across. And using that shape of that armhole, let's bring it in and take advantage of that, put it here. So again, I'm gonna cut up. Alright, so essentially what we're going to do now is pin the tassels to the panel. So what essentially needs to be done next is closing off the exposed seams. I'm going to do a double fold or a single fold. So starting from each split that I've cut through at the bottom, I'm just going to sew it across. And then I'm folding it in half so that I can cut down the center back. That way there's a center back seam and the zip can be put in place. So just folding it in half. Alright, so what we're going to do is cut the lining up, cut at the side seams here. So what we're going to do now is work out the lining for the bottom skirt. What I've got here is the front bottom skirt. So what we're going to do is get the measurement of this and copy it for the lining. And because I want to leave this section here to show this flower detail, I'll have to make the lining of the hem finish around here, measuring pretty much this rectangle shape and then replicating it onto the lining. Piece of paper, I'm just going to use it way in which I can trace this front skirt onto it. This much of the hem is being left out. So holding firmly down, essentially I want the lining so that it covers the majority of the front of the bottom skirt. This is the right side of the back skirt. Just copy from here to here all the way down. To get a piece of paper, let's copy it onto the paper. So now that that's done, I also want to take in the seam allowance so that that lining isn't shown through. Now that we've got it folded in half, the back skirt lining, okay, so marking in the measurements that we took before for the front skirt lining, from what I measured before, it was 43 by 29.5. Alright, so what I have here is opened up the dress of the skirt. This is all the skirt section. This is the front, and these two here are the back of the skirt. I will be sewing in this area here, in this area here. So what I've done is overlock all the edges for the top of the skirt. Is marked in the darts for the skirt, front and back. So just following the markings, sew in the darts. Now we're just working on the waistline exposed seams. The lining is closed off at the side seam. And now we're doing the lining of the back skirt to the front. Alright, so next what we're going to do is just sew down the skirt splits so that they're held down between the lining and the outer shell. So here I've got the bust panels here, which will go connected to the front pleated section. This is where the bust dart is. I've hand stitched it, and so far is just sew in the bust darts. So I wasn't able to film it, but I've just replicated it onto the lining pieces as well. Here is the other side. So this is the left side bust panel, and the other one before was the right. So just copying the sewing of the bust dart on the lining. Now put in hemming to kind of close off the exposed seam. Starting with the left side panel of the bust, I'm going to just put a satin binding on here, just the top and bottom, so that it can seal off the lining and the outer shell together and it's not so exposed. So what it essentially is going to look like is just have a clean finishing. So repeating what we just did, we're gonna do the same thing and place the binding at the bottom of the bust panel. So next is just sewing the front center panel of the skirt to the tassels, which we just pinned. So just concentrating at 0.5 centimeter seam allowance. We're gonna sew the boob tube panel piece, the dress. So what's next is doing the neckline halter neck. I've just done some hand stitching where we're placing the tassel trim on the front neck piece, and then I've just done a double layer so that it's slightly thicker and just has more structure. So this is what the neckline looks like, and it will be tied with a button. So what we have here is the front panel and then the two busts. So what I'm doing now is the next step is putting the binding onto the edge of the center panel of the dress. So what we have here is hook and eye, in which we're going to sew in place at the boob tube section. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it different to what normally is supposed to happen. Just putting pins in place so that later putting it without this outer shell, because later hand stitch it with 0.5 folded in and then sew it on the machine. Alright, so moving on to the other side. We're just going to place the strip exactly so that it's matching the hook to the eyes of the other side. So, snip the excess part. Alright, so now that the excess is off, we are ready to sew on at the edge of the binding strip. Now that we have the strip of eye set in place, we're going to go ahead and edge stitch right on the edge, but on the back side, because this will be the side that will be seen. Okay, now that the strip is in place, we can seal it off with the binding, like what we've done here. On to putting on the other side, which are the hooks. So just doing the edge stitch on the lining side. Alright, so we're just going to sew 1 centimeter to the zip point. Alright, so what we're going to do now is hand stitch the lining skirt onto the main fabric. So what I'm doing is I'm just pinning it to where I'll be hand stitching. So now we're just going to start our hand stitching. What I'm going to do is do the top stitching for the waistline of the skirt. The lining won't show.